Welcome to XRP Pro Ledger, and today we are going deep on something that just happened this morning that most people in this community are completely underestimating. CME Group XRP futures went live today, May 19th, 2026. And before you dismiss this as just another product launch, I want you to understand exactly what CME Group is, because the significance of what happened today is entirely about who is offering this product, not just what the product is. CME Group is the largest and most regulated derivatives exchange in the world. It is the same exchange that launched Bitcoin futures in December of 2017. The same exchange whose Bitcoin futures launch is widely credited with opening the door to institutional Bitcoin adoption. The same exchange that now processes trillions of dollars in derivatives contracts every single day. When CME Group lists a new asset for futures trading, it is not making a speculative bet. It is making a formal institutional determination that the asset meets the standards required for regulated derivatives markets. And today, CME Group made that determination for XRP. I want you to stay with me through this entire breakdown because at the 7-minute mark, I am going to show you exactly what the first day volume numbers from today's launch tell you about the pace of institutional adoption, and why XRP outperforming Solana's futures debut on day 1 is a signal most people in this community have not processed yet. But first, let us establish what exactly launched today and what makes it structurally significant. CME Group launched 2 XRP futures contracts simultaneously, a standard contract sized at 50,000 XRP and a micro contract sized at 2,500 XRP. The standard contract is sized for institutional participants, hedge funds, asset managers, banks, and corporate treasuries that need capital-efficient exposure to XRP without direct spot custody requirements. The micro contract is sized for smaller institutional participants and sophisticated retail traders who want regulated futures exposure with lower capital requirements. Both contracts are cash settled to the CME CFXRP dollar reference rate, calculated daily at 4 in the afternoon London time, traded on CME Globex, fully regulated and transparent under CFTC oversight. This is not an offshore derivatives product. This is not an unregulated perpetual swap on a crypto-native exchange. This is a CFTC-regulated futures contract on the world's largest derivatives exchange, available to every institutional participant that accesses CME markets globally. Now let us talk about the first day numbers, because this is what I promised you at the 7-minute mark. CME XRP futures recorded over $19 million in notional volume on the first day of trading, May 19th, 2026. Let me put that number in context. When CME launched Solana futures, the first day notional volume was $12.3 million. XRP futures beat the Solana debut by more than 50% on day 1. The inaugural trade was a block trade cleared by Hidden Road, one of the most prominent institutional prime brokers in the digital asset space. The fact that Hidden Road cleared the first XRP futures block trade tells you the institutional infrastructure treating XRP as a tradable asset was ready and waiting before the contracts even opened. And we expect the follow-through tomorrow on May 20th to add even more sustained institutional volume, confirming that today's activity is the beginning of sustained participation, not a one-time novelty. Now let us talk about what the open interest trajectory means, because this is the metric that tells you the most about long-term institutional adoption. CME XRP futures are approaching the $1 billion open interest milestone faster than any prior CME crypto futures contract in history. $1 billion in open interest means $1 billion of institutional capital committed to XRP futures positions. This is not speculative volume that enters and exits in the same session. This is capital that has taken a position and is holding it. The speed at which XRP futures are approaching the $1 billion OI milestone, faster than Bitcoin futures, faster than Ethereum futures, faster than Solana futures, tells you something about the pent-up institutional demand that has been waiting for a regulated XRP derivatives product. Now let us talk about why the muted price reaction on launch day is actually the expected and healthy response. XRP traded between $1.38 and $1.43 on launch day. No explosive breakout, no immediate rally. The community is reading this as a disappointment. It is not. When CME launched Bitcoin futures in December of 2017, the immediate price reaction was volatile and ultimately unsustainable. The lasting institutional adoption that Bitcoin futures enabled happened over months and years, not on the launch day. The structural value of CME XRP futures is not in what happens to the price on May 19th. It is in what the existence of these contracts enables for institutional participation going forward. Every hedge fund that could not previously take a regulated XRP position can now access XRP exposure through CME futures without touching spot markets. Every bank treasury that needed a regulated hedging instrument for XRP exposure now has one. Every institutional investor that required futures market infrastructure before allocating to spot ETFs now has the foundation they needed. The price reaction on day one is a data point. The institutional infrastructure created by today's launch is a structural change that compounds over months and years. Now let us connect the CME futures launch to the existing XRP institutional infrastructure. XRP spot ETFs have accumulated $1.39 billion in cumulative inflows, with 7 active funds holding approximately 886.8 million XRP in regulated custody. Bitnomial became the first CFTC-regulated clearinghouse to accept XRP as margin collateral. The SEC reduced the broker-dealer RLUSD haircut from 100% to 2%. MasterCard is settling credit card transactions on the XRP ledger in production testing. Binance natively integrated RLUSD on XRPL. And today, CME Group listed CFTC-regulated XRP futures that outperformed the Solana debut on day one. Each of these developments individually is significant. Together, they describe an institutional infrastructure that is assembling around XRP at a pace and depth that has no precedent in the asset's history. The question is not whether institutional infrastructure is being built around XRP. The question is whether the Clarity Act delivers the legal permanence that allows this infrastructure to operate at full scale. Now let us talk about what CME futures mean for the spot ETF picture. The existence of regulated CME futures is one of the primary criteria that SEC staff have historically cited when evaluating spot ETF applications. The logic is straightforward. Regulated futures markets provide price discovery and surveillance sharing mechanisms that reduce manipulation risk in spot markets. Bitcoin spot ETFs were approved in the United States only after Bitcoin futures had been trading on CME for years. Ethereum spot ETFs followed the same path. CME XRP futures launched today. The spot ETF infrastructure already has $1.39 billion in cumulative inflows. The Clarity Act is advancing toward a full Senate vote with an August 10th recess deadline. The 3 pillars that preceded Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETF institutional adoption are all assembling for XRP simultaneously: regulated futures, spot ETF infrastructure, and legislative clarity. Now let us connect everything to the supply picture. Exchange reserves have dropped from 3.76 billion XRP to approximately 1.66 billion XRP since October 2025. That is a 56% decline in liquid supply in under 8 months. Whale wallets controlling 68.5% of circulating supply are holding in private custody. ETF funds hold 886.8 million XRP in regulated custody. CME futures participants who take long positions do not add to exchange supply. They add to institutional demand without removing tokens from the system. As CME open interest grows toward and beyond the $1 billion threshold, the institutional demand signal becomes larger and more sustained, arriving into a supply picture that has been systematically compressed by every other accumulation mechanism simultaneously. Now, I want to address something directly, because this community deserves a rational voice on what CME futures actually mean and what they do not mean. Futures markets can be used for hedging as well as speculation. Not all open interest represents bullish positioning. Basis traders, arbitrageurs, and risk managers use futures to reduce exposure as well as to gain it. David Schwartz has been consistent about this. The bull case for XRP is built on visible data and measurable institutional adoption, not on guarantees or secret mechanisms. What today's CME launch tells you is structural, not predictive. It tells you that the regulated infrastructure treating XRP as an institutional-grade asset is expanding, that the demand for this infrastructure was strong enough to outperform Solana's debut on day one, and that the path from here to broader institutional adoption is now shorter than it was yesterday. Now I want to talk about what most people in this community are getting wrong right now. XRP is trading between $1.38 and $1.43. CME Group just listed CFTC-regulated XRP futures that beat Solana's debut on day one. The institutional infrastructure around XRP is expanding on multiple fronts simultaneously. And the retail market is watching a sideways price chart and asking when something is going to happen. Something happened today. CME Group made a formal institutional determination that XRP meets the standards for regulated derivatives markets. Hidden Road cleared the first block trade. $19 million in notional volume confirmed institutional demand on day one. The retail market is waiting for a green candle to validate what the data already shows. The institutions are not waiting. They traded $19 million of XRP futures on the first day of regulated access. So let us zoom out and see the complete picture assembling right now. CME Group XRP futures live today, May 19th, 2026. Standard 50,000 XRP and micro 2,500 XRP contracts. First day notional volume $19 million. Beat Solana debut of $12.3 million. Hidden Road cleared first block trade, approaching $1 billion OI milestone faster than any prior CME crypto contract. Price between $1.38 and $1.43. Structural, not speculative reaction. Spot ETF cumulative inflows 1.39 billion. ETF funds hold 886.8 million XRP. Bitnomial, MasterCard, Binance SEC, all positioned around XRP infrastructure. Exchange reserves down 56% since October 2025. Whale wallets, 68.5% of circulating supply. Clarity Act advancing toward August 10th recess deadline. Standard Chartered projecting 4 to 8 billion in ETF inflows post-enactment. CME Group does not list futures contracts for assets it does not believe have institutional demand. $19 million on day one confirmed they were right. If this analysis changed how you are thinking about what the CME XRP futures launch actually means for institutional adoption, hit like and subscribe. I drop deep dive breakdowns like this twice a day to keep you ahead of the move.